Welcome in, builders. This week we are taking a look at another Middle Age nation. This is Uruk city-states. Uruk is a warm plain inhabited by Enkidus, large, hairy wild men with horns and unkempt hair. Since the founding of Eridu, the first city, civilization has spread and the kingdom expanded. Other cities were founded in the image of Eridu, each with its own character. Administrators from the city of scribes aided local rulers, while traders and merchants from the city of trade improved the economic infrastructure of the kingdom. But the Insi of the Eridu lost power, and petty kings of the new cities rose to power and claimed the Insi title. Strife and turmoil tore the kingdom apart. One of the new cities, the city of gods, was blessed by the awakening god and saw the first Intu of the moon erect a great temple in the city. It soon replaced the first city as a religious center, and the Intu priestesses of the first city moved to the city of gods, no longer bound in marriage to the ruling Insi. With the coming of the awakening god, the city-states have set their differences aside and joined a common cause. In the plains of Uruk, the first city still stands as a symbol of civilization, although its temporal and religious power has diminished. Now, each city has its own Insi ruler. The wild men are no longer wild, and the shamans and bone readers of old have been replaced by priests and mages of the city. This is the outcome of early era and they have actually done pretty well for themselves. They have kept most of their magic, they have kept their faith, and they have managed to technologically advance. So, big thumbs up there. Unlike many other nations that stagnate, while we are not the best at any of this stuff, technologically wise, we've at least made advances. We're not still using just our bronze, metal, and furs, and even some stone tools that we had in the early age. Now we are relatively solidly up into iron stuff, although we do still have a few troops who continue to use bronze. For our national features, we are a large race. Our smallest things are size 4s, and a good chunk of our guys are size 5. We prefer the heat scales of +1. Militarily wise, we have the Enkidu infantry, and they say fearsome Musushu chariots, but we'll get into this, but that's just not true, frankly. Magic, we are very strong in Astral. We have recruitable Astral 3s that can random up to 4s. We are pretty good at nature. We have a little bit of earth, a little bit of water, and a small amount of air. Pretty decent. Our priests are strong, ranging all the way from Holy 3s. We have some just plain sacreds. We have Holy 2 commanders. A pretty good gambit. We have a lot of these ones up here are all sacred. So a lot going on in the command line. And we have an okay sacred for our nation. We also are still good at recalling our god. We still have the Gala, who has the eulogist. Essentially, she acts like she's holy free for the purposes of recalling a dead god. I have not verified that this is still the case, but I believe that Uruk maintains Ur's advantage that if your god is slain and recalled, you will not lose magic paths. I don't know why that would have been removed, so I'm going to assume that is still the case. That being the case, the combination of fast recalls and not losing magic paths for dying strongly biases me towards wanting something that can get out there and fight or cast or do something beyond just sitting in our capital, even if we do have Holy 3s, which are very, very convenient. For scales and blesses, we get an additional order limit of +1. And our heat limit is +1. For buildings, we use fortified cities. These are different than the regular path. I would say that they're okay. We'll look at them when we get into the example game. However, our temples cost 900 gold. That's actually kind of painful. And combine that with the fact that we want a lot of dominion going out if we're going to have a fight god, because we want him to be fighting in his own dominion and not outside of it. So it does hurt quite a bit to have a 50% increase in temple costs. And we are not a cheap nation for recruitment of troops or mages. So that's an ouch. That's a bit of an ouch there. For sites, we have 3 different sites. We have the Great Temple of the Moon, which provides us with 2 astral gems and some of our sacreds in the capital. We still have the Swamps of which gives us a nature gem and allows us to get the Charioteer unit. And we have the House of Water, which gives us a water and an earth gem. Overall, pretty decent. Water, earth, nature, astral is a good spread. They're all paths that we can do things with, so that's pretty handy. The astral is nice for our high astral mages. The nature, well, I'd like some more, is decent for our purposes. And we can get out there and site search for more of all of those things. The only one we're really missing is some air gem income, although air is very weak on our nation. Units and sacred. As you can see here, we have a pretty large spread of different types of units, and I would say that these guys are average-ish. They have some strong points and they have some weak points. Let's take a look. First of all, we have two different archers we can choose from, both of which are longbow troopers. And of course, they are our Enkidu chassis, which is a pretty good chassis. Enkidu are size 5 for the males and size 4 for the females. Size 5 is a great size to be because you can still fit 2 into a square while being as big as you can get. So you have good strength and good HP. 24 HP and 15 strength is pretty good on anything. Do note we have more HP than we have cost in gold, 50% more in fact. So HP per gold is really good on this type of chassis. Strength again is also very good at 15. That makes for a very strong longbow of 16 piercing damage. And while the crossbow has now been invented and is king, longbows still are all right. They make decent counter batteries against crossbows because crossbows fire slower. Unfortunately, on this and the other archer chassis, our protection's not high enough to save us from crossbow fire, but with enough numbers, ideally you'll be able to tank at least one hit, and you'll have multiple volleys into the enemy crossbows before they get their second shot. In addition, because we are size 5, we only have 2 guys per square, so we'll be relatively spread out and not concentrated. That can help us not get pinpointed, but conversely, it also makes us large targets and easy to hit. Otherwise, not too much to say about this. This one's not wearing a hat. Sad. If you're going up against people who are not firing back, this is probably your better archer if you want to use some. If you are going up against people who are firing back, this guy is probably your better choice. However, the difference between 10 and 14 protection against crossbows isn't actually that much. You do put a hat on, so that is pretty valuable. Otherwise, it's the same dude. He's just now more protected, essentially. Either way, like I said, I think these are still usable. They're strong enough that 16 piercing damage, even against, let's say, like Abyssians with 18 protection, you have an okay chance of getting some hits in. So I don't think that these are totally outclassed like, say, a short bow might be. So decent to usable troops. Also of note, we still use that dagger as our secondary weapon. I really wish this was a short sword, but that's okay. 10 attack isn't great, but at 17 damage, you can stab some fools who get up in your grill. So not the worst. Both chassis have 10 precision, so they're not great archers, but they're not terrible either. They're all right. If you're going to use them, though, you do need to get a critical mass. You can't just throw 5 of these guys out and expect them to do too much. Because they are not super precise and they are very long range, you have a lot of scatter on these shots. Next up, we have the Enkidu Spearman. And this guy, I'm not enamored with him. Again, it's our standard chassis. And again, only 16 gold. This is 16 resources. Compared to our light guy here, it's the same cost. Compared to our heavier archer, it is cheaper. He has a length 3 spear that he's okay with, bog standard 10 attack. Not too much to say about this guy. If you're not worried about incoming archer fire, maybe this is the better chassis just on cost compared to the Enkidu soldier with spear. This guy is very similar. I think that's even the same armor. No, we go from a cuirass to a halberd. So this is a little bit heavier, and we have an iron cap. We invented hats, boys. We invented the hat. I like these troops. They're okay. Where they're really nice is if you're fighting somebody who doesn't have a length 3 weapon, so you can get some chances for repels. However, we don't have great defense and we don't have great attack. They're okay. Their benefit is decent protection and a good amount of hit points and good strength. That's what they're good at. And being relatively cheap for what they can do. Although at 24 resources, we are paying a bit of a premium here. Next up, we have the Enkidu Royal Guard. Again, these are all right. Similar to the last guy we looked at, however, instead of a length 3 spear, we now have a short sword. The benefit of the short sword is we are a lot better with it. 12 attack versus 10 attack is quite a jump. You will hit things a lot better with 12 attack. Now, you risk the fact that you might get repelled here with your length 1 weapon and your middling morale, but that might be a trade-off you'd be willing to make. If you do hit somebody, you are likely to kill them with 21 damage if they are a relatively human chassis. Overall, I think these guys are all right. They do come in with bodyguard, which can be handy. We have some expensive mages or mages that we're relying on, so giving them a couple bodyguards isn't the worst thing ever. Next up, we have what I would say is probably the star of the show. We have the Enkidu Iron Warrior. These are quite nice. Why are they quite nice? It's Berserk. 11 attack with a length 1 weapon. That's middling. As I said, repels are going to be an issue. We're wearing our heavier gear, including the cap. However, 26 HP for 22 gold, so not quite as efficient, but Berserk makes a huge difference. You can ignore repels. You'll still take the 1 poke damage possibly, but you'll still get your attack off. You won't abort it. In addition, in the game behind us here, 4 or 5 times, I had what would have been a lost battle. The leadership has retreated. A lot of my non-Berserk troops had retreated, and my Berserkers actually carried the day. And 2 to 4 of them would stay on map and finish off the last couple enemies. And so I would actually win a battle I otherwise would have lost. In addition, these guys, none of our troops are spectacular. We're not the best armored. We're not the best attack. We do okay on the damage, but we struggle to hit. We're mainly blockers for the mages and maybe the archers to do the work. So having Berserk blockers with good protection and good HP is excellent. These are quite good troops. Next up, we do have a recruit in non-fort province troop. These guys, for what they are, they're okay. They are no helmet, no Berserk axe troops. They still hit very hard and they're decent at using their axe with an 11. These are usable. Just like with we love money. And I found it very hard to have money to do non-fort recruitment. If I had the money, I'd rather get the better troops and not the out-of-fort guys. But just while mages were searching, I would collect a couple up. Or if I had an army that was pathing somewhere, I would just kind of recruit in front of the army. And they would pick up, 3, 4, 5 guys each step as they traveled. It just helped bulk out the numbers a little bit. Other than that, though, nothing really to write home about here with this guy. Next, let's take a look at the Mashushu Charioteer. I want to like these guys. I really do. But they have the same problem the Sacreds did in early age with the Mashushu. They recruit only in capital, and they're 1 per turn. Sure, recruit 10 of them, and they'll be fine. They're actually pretty decent chariots. If you look at the Mashushu, they have 15 natural protection, so that's actually pretty good. They are tramplers. They have fear. That's all pretty good stuff. But you get 1. I wish this was 1 per fort and not cap only. They are not sacred, so I wish that was the case. They would be far more interesting if that were the case. As it is, sure, get them. They're fine. They have a spear lady in the back, so she gets some repels. The Mashushu itself has 3 good attacks, including a venom attack, which is kind of nice. Has the fear. They're fine. Do note they are cold-blooded, so we will want to stay warm. We probably don't want to go cold scales if you want to use them. They have swamp survival. They have lots of poison resist. They're fine. They're fine. Finally, for the land troops, we have the Maiden of the Moon. This is our cap-only sacred. They're okay. Their claim to fame is because they are the Enkidu women, they are only size 4, and they are formation fighter. So you actually can get 3 of these into a square. And for 3 of these in a square, that's pretty good. That's a lot of HP density. That's normal attack density. However, they only use bronze gear, so that's a little bit of a detriment. So they end up at 17 protection, and other than that, they don't do anything special. If I was going to use these, I would probably want magic weapons, and maybe some other utility blesses. I don't know what else you really want. They have a little bit of natural protection already. They don't have multiple attacks. They don't have some crazy repel weapon. They're okay. I think if you want to use them, they're fine. We do have a summon we can bring in for magic weapon access, but having it on these would be nice. Recently, we did the Middle Age Abyssia stream, and we had magic weapons on our sacreds, and they were usable in several fights. So I think that is a good utility bless. Nothing to write home about, but usable. Totally usable. Finally, we have 2 different troops that are underwater only. We do have the technology to build underwater forts. If you remember from we are a dual kingdom. We have kind of a sister kingdom. I believe it's Kalulu is the name of it, underwater. So if you can get underwater, you can build fortifications down there, and they're pretty good. And you can get troops. So we have this guy who's aquatic only. He has a bronze spear and nothing else. Pretty trash. We have this guy who is the same, but now he has a chest piece of armor. Pretty okay. I mean, you're not going to beat underwater nations easily, but at least you have an underwater troop to use. Heroes, commanders, and prophet. For heroes, we have 2. We have the Favored of Inky. This guy's all right. He is a Nature 3, Priest level 2. His big claim to fame is he's immortal. So if he dies, he will reform in your capital. He's not particularly good at leading troops. In fact, he's quite bad at it. And he's quite old. Quite old. But because he's immortal, he'll just keep coming back. Should be noted, we are a nation that does have Disease Healer, which helps keep old people alive quite a bit. But we do not have native access to Healer, unfortunately. If you get this guy, he is your highest nature mage, and that can be useful. With a Thistle Mace, you get up to 4, and you can start doing some pretty big battlefield nature things. Otherwise, he's okay. He's okay. Immortality really saves him and keeps him kind of interesting. Secondly, we have Apakalu. Apakalu is a very strong mage. He has Inspiring Researcher, excellent. He has Adept Researcher plus 10, excellent. He's a Holy level 3, great. 2 nature, 3 earth, 4 water. If I got this guy, I would strongly try to find something I could use to help get underwater and use him to summon a bunch of water elementals to get the ball rolling down there. Otherwise, Falling Frost, he can do it natively without having to communion up. He does have enough earth to do some interesting earth things since he can go up to earth 4 with just earth power, 5 with boots. He also could craft you earth boots, which would be pretty valuable for you. He's fine. Again, usable. Nothing like, crazy, but he's all right. For leaders, we have a lot of different leaders here. We have the Enkidu Scout. If you find independent scouts, I would just get them because they will be 5 gold cheaper. Otherwise, he's usable. I believe you only get him inside of forts. Yeah, you do not get him just randomly. So if you have a fort, you get him. You can't get them out in the wild, which is a smidgen unfortunate because at least that would give you recruit anywhere scouts. Otherwise, sure, he's fine. One thing of note, we have a national item, spoilers. We have the Headdress of the Buffalo. That would actually be vaguely interesting on these guys since they don't have hats. It would give him a hat. He does have a longbow, so he has something to do in combat. You could fire rearmost or something. And with the Headdress of the Buffalo, not only does it raise your strength, so it'll raise that damage a smidgen, you would summon in a buffalo that would fight for you. And I like buffaloes as animal chassis, so food for thought, something different. Next up, we have the Enkidu Commander. Unfortunately for him, he only has 50 leadership. I don't tend to get these guys. Maybe get 1 to help ferry troops as reinforcements at the beginning. Otherwise, I think independent commanders are just cheaper and don't require my fort turns. Yeah, that's basically it for him. It's unfortunate that he is only 50 leadership. Next up, we have the Naditu. The Naditu is an Astral 1, Priest level 1. They're fine. They have 7 research for 40 gold per year. I believe we have more efficient, but that's usable. We also have the Grand Communicant ability. This is patched into Dominion 6 relatively recently. Essentially, what you can do is, if you are in the same place as a person casting a ritual, you can join in the communion casting of a ritual, which will add as if you were an extra gem over casting the ritual. Quite interesting, and we are a nation who's pretty good at that. I don't know exactly what you're casting to take advantage of it, but it's there. better to have it than not, I suppose. I don't think it raises the cost, so it's fine. Next up, we have the Nin. The Nin is a priest level 1, and they get a random water, earth, astral, nature. I don't find these ones particularly useful. Again, 7 research for 42, maybe a little higher with your path on there. I think because this is 100%, we pay for this already though, so it's fine. The other one would be more efficient than this though. Next up, we have the Gala. I actually like the Gala, and if I'm going to get one of these super cheap ones, this is the one I get because it has the Eulogist. Eulogist is the ability that adds priest level, so this acts as if it's the priest level 3 if you're recalling your god. They're also a nature 1. Nature 1 actually can do useful combat things. You could Barkskin, Eagle Eyes, Web, or Vine Arrow. I think you can also cast Heal. And we have Cassies that are HP high enough to actually survive to get a heal. So that could be vaguely useful. Yeah, I think they're all right. Do note they are spell singers. So they sing their magic, which makes them cast 50% slower, but also take less fatigue. So they will just go and go and go during combat casting spells. Not particularly amazing here or anything, but it's also not particularly a negative. It's okay. I like using these to build my infrastructure out and about, and possibly even get out and help with a little bit of preaching since they're relatively cheap. Overall, they're okay. I do like to get, like I said, a few of these in case I need to recall my god. If you had 10 of these, that would be 30 priest levels recalling a god per turn. You'll get your god back in a couple turns tops. So that's handy to have in your back pocket if you're chancing your god getting killed. Next up, we have the Gudu. The Gudu is a priest level 1. He gets a random of air or earth. Getting one of these guys early to get out and do some air searching would be rather nice. We would like Alquills to help our kind of middling research along, and we do want a lot of research, so that would be pretty nice. And at a 50-50, you'll get one relatively quickly. I'm not too worried about that. Otherwise, 44 gold for 7. So again, we could just get the first one for 40 gold for 7, so not efficient there. Next up, we have the Ashipu. The Ashipu is our disease healer. Pretty valuable there. Unfortunately, we don't have regular healing. It would sure be nice if we did, but we don't. He has Astral 1, Nature 1, Priest 1. That's pretty important pathing for communions so that we can do some big nature things like perhaps Foul Vapors. As a communion slave, they're pretty good because they have high HP, and we have nature in our communion. So we could do like Enlarge and Personal Regen and have these guys kind of be a turbocharged communion battery. Pretty nice there. Also, maybe as just standalone casters, they're okay. Again, Barkskin, Eagle Eyes, you could do Buddy Ethereal. They're okay. They're not efficient at it, but if you needed to, you could. We have crossed solidly further into efficiency here. 9 research for 74 golds. Decent. Next up, we have the Ishib. He is a Water 1 Priest level 2 with a random of air, water, earth, or nature. So one option might be try to get one of these guys that is water 1, air 1, and then he could go out and search both of those paths for you. That'd be relatively mage turn efficient. And as you're fishing for that, your other ones could help preach or just do some research. We have 9 for 88. So now we've slid back towards just standard efficiency. Next up, we have the Irish Dingir. She is pretty good. Water 1, Astral 2, Priest level 2. She has 11 research for 106, so we're still at efficiency. We have Fortune Teller 5. Astral level 2 is pretty nice. You can spam Mind Burn, and you could Light of the Northern Star or Sphere of Power up to 3, and you could spam Soul Slay. Those are pretty decent. If you had to, you could hop into Communion and do some water stuff. If you go underwater, that could be useful. Or even maybe you just need to do Falling Frosts or, I don't know, some of the fatigue water spells perhaps. Could be something useful there. I tend to lean into their Astral when I use them. Also use them for fortune telling and preaching. Next up, we have the Incy. This is our best commander by far. He has 100 leadership, 20 magical leadership. He is not slow to recruit. He's from any fort. 300 gold, a smidgen on the pricey side, but he's pretty good. He has Water 1, Nature 1, Priest level 2, and a random of Water, Earth, Astral, Nature. So he can self-buff quite well with all those. My favorite is Nature 2, because you could Bark Skin, Personal Regen, Eagle Eyes, and then advance and cast spells. He is armored, although not great. You could Iron Skin, you could Body Ethereal, Twist Fate, lots and lots of different buffs you can do off of those. So he is a leader who has things he can do. He's smart enough to have at least some kind of headgear on with his crown, and he has a shield, so he's all right. Eagle Eyes and perhaps a two-shot bow could be another thing that could be kind of interesting on him. Overall, pretty good leaders. I try to keep one of these in every fort to gather up my reinforcements, and while they wait, they can preach or they can do research, so they're not just standing around patrolling. So I always love people who have things they can do beyond just be the leader of your troops. And the fact that he has armor and a shield is a good bonus in my book. Next up, we have the Mashu. This is a cap only. He is Astral 3, Nature 1, and gets a random of Air, Water, Earth, Astral. For me, the most important one there is the Water, because with Nature and Water, we can quite easily communion up to Nature 4, Water 1, which would allow us to cast Foul Vapors. We have decent HP, and we have easy access to either crafted Poison Resist, Bless Poison Resist, or cast Spell Poison Resist. So pretty good on that. Oh, and I guess we did have a second Fortune Teller, so I was incorrect about that. And he's pretty good at it. However, he is cap only. He is slow to recruit. 15 research, 158 gold, slightly below efficiency, and especially because you're only getting one every other round. However, I would fish for a couple of these to do Foul Vapors, probably. Outside of that, they could just straight up cast Soul Slay or Doom, or they could communion up for Master and Slaves, perhaps. They're already kind of sort of close. And if you get the Earth one, you could do Earth Astral and get the Astral boosters. Could be pretty good there. Overall, I like this guy quite a bit. Note, he is not a priest, even though he is sacred. So make sure you bring somebody along to bless him. Yeah, pretty nice. I like that guy. Next up, we have the Int 2. This is our cap only Holy 3. Along with that, she is Astral 2, Water 1. However, she does come in old age, just barely. Also has Fortune Teller. She's Inspirational 2, but she doesn't do formations. And she gets a random of Water, Earth, Astral, Nature. I like these well enough. I'm not really sold on the sacreds for this nation. And even if you did get them, they're not particularly hard to bless because they are formation fighters. So they're going to be pretty condensed down. But I think there's nothing wrong with grabbing some Holy Threes. They could grab other thrones. They can do easy Sermons of Courage. They're good at banishing, etc., etc. They are slow to recruit cap onlys, though, so you're never going to have a ton of them. But one or two out on your borders to help grab thrones quickly, I do not think you would be sad about that. For the last land force, we have the Enkidu Shaman. This guy is really interesting. He can only be recruited in non-fort province, and he's not sacred. That means we only need a 600 gold lab with no terrain requirements to be able to recruit these guys. Now, they will be slow to recruit because we can't have a fort. However, that's not bad. These guys are decent. 7 research because they are inept researcher, unfortunately, at 140 gold means they're not efficient, but I do think if you can help it, get these guys early recruiting, have them help you hit an early research goal, and then go out and use them in combat. Having Earth 1 means that you can give yourself up to Iron Skin. Pretty nice. With a single gem, you can Earth Power yourself. If you get a Thistle Mace, you can do Gaia's Blessing, so you can get yourself up to Nature 4 with just self-buffing. Pretty good. Nature 2 is also, again, a pretty good combat path. You can have some protection spell plus Eagle Eyes, and then you can spam Web to help our kind of mediocre troops actually hit things. You could spam Heal. You could spam Regen if you can get your nature up a little higher. You can give Poison Resistance. You could give Envenom Arrows. There's lots and lots of things that these guys can do. Giving yourself personal protection of some sort stacks with your furs pretty well, so their protection is not as bad as it otherwise looks. And they have Beastmaster, so maybe you're summoning up some animal chaff. These guys can help lead them around a little bit. can be kind of useful there. If you get underwater and build a fort, we have 4 more commanders. We have the Kululu Commander. He is the standard underwater leader. He has 50 leadership and he is wearing gear. We have the Kululu King. He is a water 1, priest level 2. 7 research for 80 gold is not great. He is aquatic only. We have the Kululu Sage. He's actually kind of interesting. He's actually an okay underwater mage and a decent researcher. Water 2 and a random of air, water, astral, nature. So water 2 is plenty for summon water power and the water combat magic or elemental spam. He has add up researcher plus 4. So 15 research for 212. Well, not super efficient, is pretty fast for a non-slow to recruit unit. Getting a few of these to help you conquer the oceans, and then they could retire to a fort to help you research. Could be all right. Could be all right. It's always nice when you have underwater options, if nothing else. Finally, we have the Kalitu Queen. Again, underwater fort only. She has water 1, nature 1, priest level 2, and a random of air, water, astral, nature. Pretty decent there. 108 gold for 11 research is on the cusp of efficient. I probably wouldn't get her if I was going to be recruiting underwater. I'd get the Sage, but she brings in some other underwater spells you could do, so could be pretty useful there. Who would I make my prophet? This is a nation that, because we have Holy Threes, I'm not too concerned about. You could give it to one of your Into, which would give you a Holy 4. We are vaguely cowardly. I didn't really touch on that, but 13, 12, 11, 10, 11, 10. We're not super duper brave. And our leadership, actually, 10, 10, 9, 9, 8. We're actually kind of cowardly for our leaders. So having a battlefield-wide fanaticism to up everyone's everyone's morale is actually pretty valuable. So I think that's a strong contender. I think if you wanted to give it to an Incy just to have a prophet, that would be totally fine. He's geared. He's relatively safe. Your starting guy actually is better equipped and has nothing to do, so he's a good candidate for one. We have some summonable things that also could be vaguely interesting for it. I think you're fine on any of those. Even if you're a person who likes scout prophets, at least he has 24 HP and 18 map move. I've seen worse. Overall, though, because we have Holy Threes, and if you have an awake fighting god, it's better to have your prophet for the extra dominion spread than not. I wouldn't hold off too long to pick a prophet. But I don't think you need to be overly picky here. You have plenty of choices. Even this guy with his semi, for us, high upkeep could be made prophet. Could be fine. Either way, I think that's serviceable. I would also like to note, remember that sacred units have half cost on their upkeep. So all these mages are actually relatively cheap to maintain. If you look at this guy, 140 for him for 3 paths. If we look at him, we get 4 plus 1 path for 158. That's pretty good value. As for national items, we have one national item. We have the headdress of the bull. It is a pretty decent item. It is a hat-only thing, although we have plenty of people who don't wear hats. It gives you +2 strength, and it gives you a buffalo in your retinue, even during assassinations. So, try to assassinate me and my buffalo. Come at me. And it's cheap. It's only 5 nature gems. This is fine. I mean, it's nothing like nation defining or anything, but sure, having some extra buffalo could be pretty funny if somebody's trying to assassinate you and all of your mages are wearing this. Good luck assassinating a buffalo who will enrage when you stab them with your little puny dagger. And then we have pretty tough mages behind them casting. It's all right. It's all right. For our unique magic, all of our unique magic is conjuration. We have Herd of Buffaloes at 3. We have Kurashikus at 4. We have Ugalu at 5. We have Call Anzus at 7. And at 8, we have Contact Scorpion Man and Call Apkalu. Let's take a look at all those chassis. Pretty good ones, I have to say. So first up at 3, we have the Buffalo. I like this chassis, actually. As far as animal summons go, this is my favorite. And it's not particularly hard for us to be able to cast it, which is always a huge benefit in my opinion. Herd of Buffalo only costs you 2 nature path and 8 nature gems, and for that you get 5 plus half your level of buffalo. So I would call that relatively efficient. They are size 6, so they can trample our own troops. They have 2 attacks, and they go berserk. So berserk tramplers are pretty decent. They have plenty of HP and okay morale, so they will probably go berserk before they run away. Yeah, I like these guys quite a bit. Next up, we have the Kuashiriku. These guys are all right. Again, they have just the furs, but they are sacred, so they'll take whatever bless you have. And they come in with a magic weapon. They have the Apotropic Spear, which gives Halt Demon. If you hit somebody and it is a demon, then it will paralyze them if they fail a magic resist. Could be pretty good there. And like I said, they are sacred and they are bodyguards. So they're fine. I think you can get a decent number of these. They only require Earth 1 to cast and 4 Earth Gems, and you get 2 of them out of it. That's not bad. It's not the best, but it's not bad either, especially if you don't have access to magic weapons and you need them. You could pump several of these guys out relatively quickly. Next up, we have the Ugalu. What makes this guy really interesting is that it requires 3 air to cast and 24 air gems. But if you can get one, they can summon more of themselves. So they can have the air 3 they require to cast their own spell. If I got these guys, I would use them primarily as buffing magic. Although a surprise thunderbolt or storm could be vaguely useful depending on who you're fighting. We're not going to have tons of air magic, so we're not going to have tons of air gems. It's going to be hard for us to search that out at a high level. So you're probably only going to get a handful of these guys. But if you can get them, sure, I'll take a summonable 0 upkeep air 3 mage for sure. Next up, we have the Anzu at Conjuration 7. This requires 2 water, 2 earth, and 4 water gems. You're going to have to find a way to get there, so you're going to probably need some boosters and or some empowering. However, if you do get up there, you get 2 of these guys, so they're only 2 gems each, and they're really good, actually. They have all these attacks, so a bite, 2 talons, they have a water breath, and a fire breath. So let's say you get 5 of these guys. Well, you get 6 because they come in pairs. And you do hold, attack, rear. That is not bad. That is not bad. Get them in the back doing some breathing, stun on the water, and fire on the fire breath. It's a narrow beam for range 6. The water breath is pretty cheap. It's area of effect. Yeah, I like these. They do fly in storms. They are a good siege bonus, but you wouldn't get them for that, frankly. Their main thing, like I said, is just hold and attack rear is disgusting on these guys. And they're pretty efficient. For 2 gems, I will definitely take an 82 HP chassis that can fly. Pretty darn nice. Umu Apkalu, a big caster, like one of our early era summons. Now, this is Conjuration 8, as is the Scorpion Man. To get this guy, we need an Astral 5. We can luck into an Astral 4, so that's relatively doable with a single booster. And if you did get there, Air 3, Water 3, Earth 2, Astral 4, Nature 2, Priest level 2. They give you Inspiring Researcher, and they are a good researcher themselves at 43. Although, if you're at Conjuration 8, you probably don't care about research that much anymore. If I got this guy, Combat Mage for sure. There's tons of stuff that we could do there. Well, in theory, we could do anything that he can do already. He can just do it easily, and that's pretty valuable. Quite nice there. It's always great to see nations that have usable summons. Finally, we have the Scorpion Man. As always, I've never actually summoned one of these. They look great, but by the time I get to Conjuration 8, the game's over or I have better things to do, and it's highly unlikely that I've been saving up gems for a Scorpion Man. Also of note, he's Earth 1, Fire 1 to be able to summon, so we don't have native people who can do that. We would have to fire empower somebody to do it. For other magic, we actually have a lot of things that we can do, and I think you have to make decisions early on where you want to go. So in this game, I got a few minor things, and then I went straight up for Foul Vapors. I think we are decent at this. Ideally, we would get poison resist on our berserking troops, but frankly, if they have to sacrifice themselves, I'm willing to do that. Doubly so because the first point of poison will probably berserk them anyways, and they will just fight to their death. Anybody who can survive through an Enkidu Iron Warrior that is berserking while also standing in Foul Vapors, you were going to have trouble with anyways. So can be rather nice there. We're also a nation that has other things that we would like out of enchantment, mainly being possibly some strength, although that's hard for us to do. But we can invent arrows, we can cast heal, we can cast regeneration, personal regeneration for several of our people, gift of the hair for extra speed possibly. We have things we can get out of this, so not a terrible tree to rush down. From Thaumaturgy, you're definitely going to want to get communions as soon as you have something you could communion up to do, just as a safety net. Mind Burn is a great spell throughout the game. Early game, you can even help yourself expand with a couple Mind Burners, and we can recruit Astral 2s easily enough. If we look at construction, we would probably be looking at Thistle Maces, we would be looking at other boosters, we would be looking at possibly hats, we would be looking at things that give us extra leadership or morale. A lot of our mages are quite cowardly, and we would sure like to make them a little bit better. So that would probably involve fire magic, though. Can be a little difficult to do natively. From Evocation, we would be looking at Web and Vine Arrow. Web is actually really good for us. Our guys are strong enough to break free relatively easy if we get friendly fire. And webbed people have very, very low defense. So our kind of junky troops need a little bit of help to hit. And this is a great way to do it. Gives your shamans a easy, cheap, spammable spell. It's only going to cost them 10 fatigue to cast it. Pretty darn nice there. Outside of that, we do get an occasional water 2. So having some water 2 stuff that we can do is useful. We could get a water 2 and then gym up to a rain if we're fighting somebody who's doing fire stuff. Poison darts is decent. Breath of the Dragon is also one I want to call out. This is a good spell for our shaman. They can give themselves some defense, Eagle Eyes, advance and cast spells, and they like casting Breath of Dragon. It is relatively short range, but it's relatively good at 4+ area of effect, and it does 7 poison magic damage, and it's armor negating. So while we don't struggle against armor particularly, this just negates armor and just gives us a nice AoE spell to clear out, say, some Abyssians or other things like that. Moving up to Alteration, we have, of course, the Nature and Earth self buffs. Always good on anybody who can cast them. We have some water stuff, especially if we go fight underwater, that might be relatively useful. And if we go high enough, Swarm is easily cast by our shaman. Every one of them could do that. Group Barkskin could be rather nice. If you're fighting giants, maybe you could even shrink people. That's hilarious. Blood Poisoning is a very strong spell with magic poison damage at 15+. Range 30 is not bad. It's very precise. Good for killing thugs or super combatants if they have not got poison resistance. We do have the ability to cast Transform. Transform will change you into a random monster shape. Sometimes you get lucky and get something good. Sometimes you get unlucky and get something bad. Usually you keep your magic pass, although not always. So it can be a little bit of a gamble with that, but also can help with upkeep if it gets to be a problem. Wooden Warriors or larger Oaken Army, we would quite appreciate that. That would help our Berserkers be even tougher. Finally, in Conjuration, this is where all of our national spells are. In addition, there's some other things that are handy here, although we don't use the usual suspects particularly well. Of Summon Earth Power, we need gems to do it. Or Phoenix Power, we don't do fire. But that being said, Herd of Buffalo's a fine use of nature gems, and we might want to look at summoning something that's poison resistant natively that we can use with our Foul Vapor army. Otherwise, just dumping gems can be nice. Light of the Northern Star could be nice. Astral Magic +1 the entire battlefield. All of our Astral 2s now become Astral 3s. Pretty darn nice there. Okay, so let's bring all of that together. Uruk is a nation that is not stuck in their past. They have done some progress. Now, they're still not out the cutting edge, but we're at least using iron weapons. We have relatively good magic paths. We have good priest levels. We have a relatively unique mechanic to call gods back quicker. We have underwater forts, which is rather handy. We have a usable sacred, although not stellar. We have a frustratingly good but very limited chariot that can give us some fear shenanigans that maybe people wouldn't be expecting. We have not super wide magic paths, but we have okay magic pathing and okay access to get it into communions. We are able to do foul vapors relatively easy, so that can always be nice as a battlefield clear if people haven't taken precautions against that. We have astral magic, which gives us some magic resistance type options. We have a smidgen of elemental magic in water mainly, a tiny, tiny bit of air. We have some usable summons and no combat magic. We have a non-fort recruit mage that is combat usable. So overall, a pretty decent roster, kind of let down by their mediocre troops. The troops really exist to block for you, and the troops aren't cheap. 20 gold, 26 resources, 15 recruitment points. That's a bit on the pricey side, but at least they're not miserable. They at least can fight. They can, in theory, hit things. Our Iron Warriors here, 22, 24, 17. Very usable troop. We like getting buffed, and I think we like using our mages to win battles for us. Pretty fun. Pretty fun. We're also still a size 5 nation in an era where humans are beginning to take over. So that's something semi-uncommon. We use the fortified city instead of castles. I think the castles are better defensively. I believe they have 1,000 wall integrity, but these aren't miserable. They're okay. We do get Enkidu archers in the walls, which are relatively good archers. This is fine, TM. It's fine. We only have the 2 commander points, but we get most of our roster in any fort. We're not like super duper bound on our cap onlys, like say Abyssia and the Warlocks of Middle Age. So that's pretty usable. In this game, I had an Awake Expander, and we'll look at him in a second, but luckily I haven't lost him yet. But if I did, we could call him back, and he shouldn't lose any magic paths. We can get him back relatively quickly. That's something kind of interesting. In this game, he actually soloed 2 thrones relatively early, and he could have soloed this one, but I'm now in a 3-way war with Pangea and Phaecia, so he had to stop and take time out to go fight some wars. But otherwise, pretty happy with that. Can be relatively interesting. I think when we look at God design, though, the nation's a little bit frustrating because we just don't quite have the ability to get everything we want on a single chassis. Overall, I would say we are average to maybe slightly below average for the age power level wise. And that's a perfectly fine place to be. Perfectly fine. Very usable troops and mages. Speaking of pretenders, yeah, I think it shows right here my frustration with trying to make different pretenders for this nation. Let's take a look at the attempts I did. We have Zuzu, inventor of hats. His main thing was going to be try to rush research for early foul vapors. So he'd use inspiring researcher. However, I had to take him dormant. We need scales. Our troops are kind of expensive. At minimum, I would say we need some order and probably 2 production. And because I was trying to rush for research, I wanted to have some magic scales. I went with a caster buff here. However, we don't really need Farcaster. The spells that we can cast are either 100 range or don't really matter, like web. Like you can just move up closer and cast web. So Farcaster didn't really do anything for me. I think you might be better off there taking the magic pen bonus maybe, or maybe magic weapons. And I took a little bit of reinvigoration. The other thing he did for us is he's able to craft earth boots, and he has the Air 3 needed to summon in our Air 3 mages. Okay, but I didn't like him. Next up, we have Tease, because she kept teasing me with a decent build. She, again, very similar scales. Again, had to be dormant. She came in with larger, My thought being I wasn't going to use the sacreds, so I'll just make all my sacred mages bigger for extra HP, and I gave them a little extra precision. But I realized most of the combat magic we cast is either friendly or it's on our shamans who don't get the blessing. So that's out. She again can cast the air summons and she can craft boots. She is a flying combatant and she does have awe. So once you get her gear, she's never going to be a stellar combatant, but she could do personal iron skin, temper flesh, personal regen, mist form, wearing armor, and equipped. She is a combat caster that could be useful. You could do like Breath of the Dragon at point blank, probably what she'd end up doing. It's okay. But again, dormant, so she didn't help with the kind of middling expansion that we have. And when she does come in, I didn't have any construction ready, so she couldn't just build gear and go. Meh. Next up, I tried Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone here. This is when I noticed I was having morale issues with my mages, so my thought was, okay, we'll get a little extra morale, keep the mages in the fight a little more. But he doesn't take advantage of the Eulogist trait, which is very unique to us. He doesn't really do anything special. He's terrible at crafting because he's an inept smith. His only thing he did was scales, a little morale, a little bit of reinvigoration, and summon in the air guys. Meh. Next, I tried Sunny D. I wanted to test this for myself because when you look at his protection, it doesn't list a body value. Normally you see body 0, head 0. So I thought, okay, maybe he doesn't have a body because he's literally just the sun. He has a body. If he didn't have a body, this would be an incredibly cool chassis that you could just put a helmet on and he could go out there with his huge heat aura, sight vengeance, and huge fire shield. But the fact that he doesn't have a body and you'll have 0 protection on it, the best you can do is like 80-ish protection. He'll just die. My thoughts for him was, A, that's just cool and could be relatively unique. I was able to take him awake. All I gave was just a bunch of morale to really solve that issue. And if you read down here, battles where the solar disk is present will be extremely bright. That means that basically all the battlefields won't have darkness or twilight. You just negate that mechanic. So I thought that was relatively cool, but because he can't get any body protection, he's worthless. He's just worthless. Okay, so I switched gears again, and now I tried to do Awake Expanders. I tried Beef. Beef here has hard skin and enough pathing to do personal regen. So you're going to research personal regen, and then you're going to research iron skin and temper flesh, ideally. He can get out there and he can rumble. He's okay, but he has terrible scales. A blessing that doesn't really do a lot for us. And you just have to wait for some research before he can come online. So if I had to wait for research to come online anyways, I made Dave. Dave is a golden lion. Dave has 2 things that he's going to do. Personal regen, fire shield. And then Dave's going to go eat people. That is all that Dave does. What Dave is good at is being a bit of a risky expander. He's only got 25 invulnerability, but he does have fear. He does have 3 good attacks. He does have the pathing to get personal regen, fire shield, and later on battle fury, which will up this to, I think, 17 attacks, which is pretty nice. So he's fine. In addition, he allowed me to get better scales. So order 2, production 2, misfortune 1. And I think due to some play testing, I think we could get away with probably order 1 and either get rid of the misfortune or maybe give ourselves a magic scale. He did fine. His problem was my Dominion didn't spread very well, so I was kind of limited on where he could go. Like I mentioned, he did solo a level 1 and a level 2 throne. He did pick up on Never Healing Wounds, which sucked. No way to heal it. But if he did die, I do believe when you come back, there's a chance that you lose afflictions, and he won't lose his limited magic pathing. He also brought in, did I forget his bless? He should have morale 1. Okay, I think I had Dave built incorrectly. Sorry, Dave. That's my bad. So Dave gets fire 2. He gets nature 2. And for a bless, he has superior morale times 2. Alternatively, you could give attack skill. We could do low light vision. that's vaguely useful. I think that's kind of to taste. You could do a level of poison resistance and get rid of the morale. If you're going to really lean into the foul vapor thing, maybe that's a route to take. I think I would probably go superior morale and either low light or just double superior morale. Let's do low light, let's just say. And yeah, that's our 4 points. So he's all right. In this version, I have 1 order and no misfortune. We could take a misfortune and maybe give ourselves an extra magic point, or maybe we just take the double order. This gets us more income. It helps negate the misfortune. I think I like that version better. I think this bless is kind of to taste. It doesn't do anything for him. I guess the low light vision. No, he has dark vision. Does nothing for him. So whatever. Maybe instead you go with double superior morale. Really help our mages out. But he is awake. He can totally expand. I would wait until you have personal regen and you can fight easy things. You need the personal regen and fire shield to be able to do the harder things. So I would definitely make sure to wait for that. Good thing I caught that before we streamed, or I would have been embarrassed by not having a bless. Sorry, Dave, you're cool. So in conclusion, Uruk is a decent nation, kind of somewhere in the middle of the pack. They have good astral, which is always a bonus. We don't have any blood. We don't have any death. We have plenty of missing paths. Our air is kind of weak. So we're a nation that's relatively focused, although we're not like laser focused. We could do some foul vapor things. We could do some astral things. We could hard pivot and maybe try to do some falling frost if we really had to. I don't think we're good at that. We do have water troops, so if we can find a way underwater, we actually have some ability to fight down there. Not well, but we can do it. We have okay troops that are mainly there just to block for you. Otherwise, they're kind of mediocre. We have a cool chariot that is far too limited, in my opinion. We have a usable sacred, but nothing to write home about. And we have a unique mechanic to allow us to bring back our fighting gods relatively well. Overall, a very cool, fun nation. Let me know what you think about the Pretenders. As I've stated in the past, I'm not the biggest Awake Expander type or even Titan user, but I do think this is a nation that's begging for it. Reinforced by the fact that we have Holy Threes and a unique way to bring back our Pretenders faster, I think you're missing out if you don't take advantage of that. Let me know what blesses you like. Do you really like these sacreds? Am I missing something here? For me personally, the most I would really care to give them is probably Magic Weapon, and then they're kind of whatever. They have the same problems all of our troops have. They're just okay. They're just okay. But those are my thoughts on Uruk. I look forward to playing them, and I look forward to hear what other people have thought. Do you have anything else that's interesting to Communion up to? Foul Vapors is kind of my go-to, but I'm sure there's some other interesting things there. All right. I look forward to reading the comments and seeing you on stream. Get out there and build a cool Titan, builders.